I've heard you say you're never going to sell your Bitcoin. So
Yeah.
is there any situation that you would find yourself in that you're like, you know what, I'll sell some, or are you like planning to leave it as an inheritance for your family, things like that?
So let me explain on that. Um, why would you ever sell an asset in an inflationary environment if it's being priced in fiat currency, which is collapsing in value? For example, if I told you that the dollar is going to be printed and it's going to be debased 10% a year, and if you owned a house
Mm-hmm.
and it was a desirable house and you wanted to live there the rest of your life, why would you ever sell the house? Because you know it's going up in price 10% a year. And if the interest rate is 3%, you would just hold the house the rest of your life and just refinance the house. And when you need more money, you would borrow against the house because the house is going up. If you owned a football team and I printed 10% more money, the value of the football team would go up. You're not going to sell the football team. You're going to hold it. And if you need money, you're going to borrow against it. Selling a good asset normally is always a mistake. But Warren Buffett's never sold his assets. He held them
Right.
forever. John Malone held his assets. Pretty much every billionaire that you know of for the past 100 years, they got that way by never selling anything, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the trick is you have to find an asset which is not going to be impaired, right? The reason to sell something is not because you need money. The reason to sell something is because the asset is impaired.
Mm-hmm.
And by impaired, I mean like sell the football team because you know no one will ever watch football ever again. Or sell the ranch in California because you know that they're going to pass a 5% a year property tax on California and you need to leave California and no one's going to want to ever go to that ranch. And sell it because it's impaired. If it's not impaired, then as fiat gets printed, the asset is going to go up in value if it's a high quality asset. And if you were to sell it, you would get hit with a capital gains tax, either long term or short term, right?
Yep.
Capital gains tax is likely to go up next year, right? I mean,
Yeah.
it's 25 to 50%, depending on where you're living.
Sure.
So, so you sell something, you're going to pay half of it to the federal government or the state government. You keep the other half, and then you're going to lose the appreciation on the asset. If Bitcoin was going up 20% a year, right, and you sold it, you would lose a 20% return every year for a decade, right?
Just recently, Bitcoin critic Mr. Whale published a detailed report saying Saylor has been selling his BTC for months while urging others to take out double mortgages and go all in. Mr. Whale digs into the past of Micheal Saylor, wherein he compares his investment failures of the dot-com bubble of the late 90s. Citing an article from the Fortune magazine, Mr. Whale says that Saylor lost a whopping $13.5 billion back then, the most by any individual. Later in 2000, the U.S. SEC also accused him of fraud. As a result, Saylor had to pay $350,000 as a penalty to the SEC and $8.3 million to shareholders. He even declares that MicroStrategy doesn't like Bitcoins, and insiders are selling Bitcoin. Mr. Whale digs into some old tweets by Micheal Saylor wherein he has criticized Bitcoin. In some of his very old tweets, Saylor wrote that Bitcoin's days are numbered and that it doesn't hold any intrinsic value.
That means selling $1 million of Bitcoin will cost you $10 million in 10 years.
So is your
So you lose the capital appreciation, you pay the tax,
right?
you get $500,000 to spend. Why wouldn't you just borrow $500,000?
So you're saying borrow against your Bitcoin holdings is in a way to
Yeah.
earn. Okay, so like kind of like BlockFi. I use BlockFi, lend and earn interest on my Bitcoin and other cryptos. In that type of
Let me
scenario.
make a big point, right?
Yeah.
If the asset is appreciating faster in value than the rate at which your expenses are going up yearly,
Mm-hmm.
you can borrow against it forever and your debt to equity ratio will fall.
Mr. Whale accuses Saylor of creating the Bitcoin hype and attracting investors into buying Bitcoin and his company's stock. He further adds that Micheal Saylor and his company's insiders could dump the stock at extremely overvalued prices. Mr. Whale says that Saylor is playing theatrics with his assuring words that he has no plans to sell Bitcoin in the next 100 years. Instead, MicroStrategy's CEO has an exit plan in place. Furthermore, the whistleblower also accused Saylor of swaying people to buy Bitcoin in September 2021. Mr. Whale said that it was an attempt from Mr. Saylor to gather enough liquidity to dump their own holdings. He says that Saylor's company MicroStrategy holds $63 million worth of BTC while announcing its purchase. MicroStrategy has dumped over 8,000 plus Bitcoin. I expect them to dump more in the coming months. Be careful out there, bulls, he writes. Public blockchains such as Bitcoin allow any user to verify and follow transactions made on the network. Since MicroStrategy has substantial Bitcoin holdings, its wallet address is somewhat easily found. Recent transactions made from the main custodial wallet show more than 1,500 Bitcoin was sent to secondary addresses and then to wallets associated with popular cryptocurrency exchanges, namely Coinbase and OKEx. 1,500 Bitcoin is currently worth around $63 million, which is not that substantial when compared to the company's total holdings. Nonetheless, these transactions have led to speculation online that MicroStrategy may be selling some of its BTC holdings, despite previous claims that it would not do so. However, not everyone seems to be convinced.
You see, like, if I had $1 million of Bitcoin, I borrowed 100,000 against it, my debt to equity ratio would be 10%. Maybe I pay 5% interest. Maybe I pay obscene interest, 10% interest. It cost me 110,000 instead of 100,000. Okay, well, Bitcoin's going up. Fill in the number. What do you want to fill in? 20%? It's going up 200%.
Afterwards, Micheal Saylor cleared rumors about him selling Bitcoin secretly. Recently, people have been gossiping that Saylor has been quietly selling his Bitcoin holdings, while many proposed this was not the case. Twitter was still filled with people criticizing Saylor for the same. However, it didn't take long for this to come to Michael's notice. He tweeted that MicroStrategy is regulated by the SEC, and therefore they would need to disclose Bitcoin sales in SEC filings. Why could Micheal selling Bitcoins be a big disaster? If you talk about the pinnacle of belief in Bitcoin, Micheal embodies it. He has talked about the importance and bright future of BTC time and again, while defending it from critics. Micheal has also circulated the idea that one doesn't need to sell their BTC ever. He never plans to do it and will continue to hold no matter what. His optimism has inspired many investors and has instilled faith in the market even during the tough times. MicroStrategy is also one of the largest Bitcoin holders, with 129,218 Bitcoins in its treasury. So if they start to sell, the pressure and negative sentiment are going to affect Bitcoin dramatically. Are we saying it would be the end of Bitcoin? No. But is there a chance we will see a long consolidation period? Yes.
Well, now let's come back to Bitcoin. Well, what's the highest quality asset on Earth? What's the best property you could possibly have? A city block in Manhattan? Not anymore.
Right.
It used to be a city block in Manhattan when everybody in the world went to New York City. But you can't move a city block. What if I gave you all of Park Avenue in cyberspace, and I told you that 1 billion people are going to live there one day, and they'll live there for 1,000 years? What if 10 billion people want to live in cyberspace for 1,000 years, and you could actually own 1% of the city or 0.1% of the city? Why would you ever